everybody. This is the Alex Manassa, and I'm here to give you an engineer's perspective on the rest of the world. Now, some of you might have noticed that the news media is kind of turning on the Dems a little bit. A little Pelosi getting questions here and there. Maybe it's just one single data point. It might not be a big trend, but I'm going to give you my perspective as to why you might see a trend, and it has entirely to do with incentives. If you think that life is not made up of incentives, then allow me to elucidate a little bit, right? We are evolved creatures. When you look at a wolf, it is made for catching and consuming meat. It'll sit there and eat however many pounds of meat it can, like tons of it. I want to say 60 pounds. That seems like a lot. It's just a lot of meat, right? That's what they do. Their entire body is built towards that. Everything from the little paw pads it has on the end of its feet for its environment to give it speed, to its bone structure, to its bone density, to its organ placement, to the accentuation of certain organs. Everything is made to catch food. And all businesses and people, modern people, we're here to make money. Okay? So if you're wondering why the media that's been typically highly anti-Trump, pro-Democrat might be turning on the Democrats, you might be confused if you're working under the assumption that they stand by any sort of principle. And I don't think that's true. I don't think that you can become a 3-letter or 3 to 5 letter news agency and not maximize profits, or at the very least not stand by principles over profits. Okay, Trump is really good for their ratings. Trump saved Twitter. Trump is really interesting. Notice how he takes over the news cycle. Imagine if there wasn't any Trump anymore. I don't think anyone would tune in. Rachel Maddow wouldn't have a career. A lot of these people wouldn't have a career. A lot of these news shows would just be... I mean, do you remember how boring and ridiculous cable news was back in like the Jon Stewart days, like back in when George W. Bush was president? Yeah, there'd be some big cataclysmic events once in a while, but sometimes they would just sit and talk about like a piece of luggage that got left at the airport all day, just wondering how they can dissect this story. What are the possibilities? And they just milk. You just sucked blood from a stone. Trump is a godsend because he keeps them constantly inundated with news and constantly making everyone angry. If we don't have Trump in for the next election, their ratings are going to plummet. I think they know that. And what they want to do is they want to maximize, right? So you want to maximize the amount of Trump hatred you can get, and then it becomes election time and it's got to be a big turnaround, okay? And you do it at the last minute. You do it at the very last minute. And then Trump gets reelected, back on the hate train. They're probably just going to not talk about him as much, or they're going to focus on other things that are wrong. Also, what might make money now is that conservatives are going to watch more TV, and people are going to want to win those audiences over. It depends, right? It depends on where they can get money, and that's the market. I don't know what products are going to be popular next year. I would not have predicted a Furby, but for some reason, an entire industry got optimized for like a good year or two on making these god-awful toys. If you're wondering why they might be changing behavior, think of it from the lens of what maximizes their intake, their nutrient intake, so to speak. And that'll completely change the way you look at the world. It'll completely change the way you look at the world. If you think that anyone's on your team, you're totally wrong. They're always on their own team. All these news agencies mostly just serve to stir up anger and controversy. I mean, let's take a narrative, right? You might wonder, why on earth do we constantly talk about, like, why are I don't even know what the phrase is, Black Americans, African Americans. Some of them don't like being called African Americans because they're not from Africa. They might be from Jamaica or from the Caribbean islands. They might be Afro-Cuban. So anyways, I'm just going to say minorities, I guess. I don't know. The thing is, you try to put a lot of people under a single net. If you say Hispanics to a Hispanic person, you're going to piss them off. There's a pretty good chance. Or they're going to look at you like you're an idiot. If you say Latinx, they're just going to look at you confused and like you're an idiot. Because if you try to lump in Mexicans with El Salvadorians, with Puerto Ricans, they don't like it. Asians are the same way. So let's just move on. I'm just going to say a certain minority. They are focused on a ton. Movies made, more than you can count. Tons of Oscars won. Tons of TV miniseries. Tons of news is on it, right? It just seems like it's really accentuated, right? Because it's a good narrative. That's what sells. That's what sells news, is a narrative. this person's a bad person. These people are oppressed. They're trying to make it look as much like Hunger Games as possible, right? They're trying to make, and it follows a normal story arc almost. Is you start out the first act, things are okay, then then things go downhill, and the hero has a call to action, and then in the third act, it looks like there's no hope, and then finally they break through, and then in the end it's happily ever after. But the problem is that story stops, that story ends. The news doesn't want the story to ever end. They want you to, the part where you're most emotionally invested is the part where you will tune in the most, the third act. They want everything to seem as absolutely hopeless as possible so that you tune in. That's the part where you're on the edge of your seat, the third act. So we're just in a perpetual third act if you watch the news media. Now, if you don't watch the news, you're probably a much happier person for it because you don't have this narrative drilled into you. But if you're like, oh man, things are so hopeless, everything's going terrible. If you paid attention, if you watch the news from like 2003 onward, it's been nothing but that narrative, right? There's no news of hope. Why do you think no one cares about Asian Americans or even Jewish Americans? Like, there's a little bit where we cared about the Holocaust and whatnot, but the thing is, they reach their fifth act. Asians are pushing through. They don't want it. They don't want the narrative. They reject it. Absolutely. Every Asian is super happy when they're in the third act. Imagine a story where the hero in the third act is hopeful and just dusts themselves off, says, yep, I'm getting up. I refuse to be third acted right now. Those people don't make good stories. People who are successful aren't interesting. I mean, they can be inspiring, but they're not interesting, right? Okay, let me make you might be saying, oh, Alex, you're crazy. Like, guys like Elon Musk, they're super interesting. No, they're not. They do interesting things. They're inspiring, but how much of the news cycle do they take over? George Floyd is way more interesting than Elon Musk. That's a fact. If there was the opposite, Elon Musk would be in the news because he would sell. But he's not. On launch day, you get a little blurb. The thing is, he's a person who makes people hopeful. I thought he was an idiot, frat boy for a while. I was like, oh, okay, all right, you got the Model S, you got the Model X, you got the Model 3. Oh, I see what you did there. But, as an engineer, I go by results. And once he got a manned space flight to the ISS, I was like, oh, okay, all right. Everyone else kind of jumped on the train maybe a decade before I did. But now I'm like, okay, fine. I'll take it. I'll take what I can get. If I have to, indulge your personal eccentricities to get manned space flight for super cheap, way cheaper than our previous president thought was even possible in a time frame that he didn't think was possible, I'll take it. Whatever. Okay. You can name it whatever you want. I don't care. You can name it the most foul thing you want, just name it the worst thing you could possibly do. I mean, I wouldn't even care if he was in fact, it would make it more interesting, to be honest. So maybe that's just why he does it, is because being successful is so uninteresting that you have to be a complete a-hole while you're doing it, to keep that narrative going, right? So people don't tune in for the fifth act. People walk out of the movie, credits roll, boom, gone. That's closure. They don't want closure. Doesn't make money. They want that to be a perpetual thing. You're not charging for admission, right? You're not paying for a ticket to watch the news. They're trying to get ad revenue off you. They want to keep you constantly in that third act. So don't fall for it. Don't be stupid. Things are fine. I think if you paid, I think it was I hate studies, by the way, but I heard an anecdote that if you didn't watch the news, you tended to be more well informed than people that did. I could believe it, because then at least you wouldn't be wrong. It's kind of like on the SATs or something, where wrong answers, I think, are negative -1/4 point. At least it was when I took them, right? Back before there were participation trophies everywhere. The total wrongness of everything that you get from the modern news makes you so dumb and so angry. They just want to keep you dumb and angry, because then you're tuning in. You're like, oh no, please, what's going to happen? And you get emotionally invested. I'm not emotionally invested to a bunch of strangers I've never met. I don't care. There isn't a single person who is a national figure. If they just dropped dead tomorrow, I think I'd be like, wow, I didn't see that coming. But then I'd be like, all right. Do I still get a paycheck? Am I still free? All right. I don't really care then. Don't get de-invest yourself as soon as you can. One thing I don't like is lies, right? That's the only thing I'm invested in, really, is the truth. And of course my religious faith and everything like that, right? The lies are what peeve me off. And there's a lie by omission. So if you see me on like my personal Facebook is set to private, only friends can see it. I post nothing, and also my Twitter is my open persona. I post nothing but the omitted facts that get left out, and I post corrections to lies, right? Like, I have no side. I'm not pro-cop, by the way. I'm not pro-cop. Everyone's trying to divide you into some sort of camp. I don't have to be pro-cop to be pro-freedom, to be anti-riots, right? If a police officer comes over and forces me to close down my business and stay in my house or face jail time or a massive fine, I don't care. I don't like the cop anymore. If that same cop gets into a fight and then gets like shot, I'm like, I don't know. Like I'm uninvested. I have no team. I will switch sides tomorrow if the facts shift, right? Facts. By the way, most facts and data is made up. I don't know if you guys know that, but data is also used to promote the narrative. Now use the lens I just showed you a little while ago. How do things get nutrients? How does this animal get nutrients? How does this company make money? How does this person make money? And ask yourself, why do scientists study the things they do? It's because it gets them money. It gets them grant money. There's no tenured position anymore. Like the tenure is a joke. People get fired constantly for just a single utterance, right? It's like if everyone cheats on their taxes, you can arrest anyone you want because all of us broke the or speeding. How about that? Everyone speeds, so an officer can actually just pull over any one of us. So if they wanted to just target one of us, they could. Sorry, I got interrupted by a GD phone call. Oh my gosh, I gotta set my stuff to private. It's one of those vehicle owner things. All right, so I was talking about looking at things through the lenses of where do you get nutrients, where do you get money, right? The scientists make money by publishing studies. Now, if there's and how do they get that grant money, right? It's almost always a political organization. And if you think that any government agency is not a political organization, I'll have you know that the DoD had to be forced not to teach anti-whiteness training. They call it diversity training. It's not. Critical race theory is very different. Critical race theory is its own rabbit hole. Go follow James Lindsay and read New Discourses, his website, to get a handle on it. But basically it means that, white people have done terrible things. Everything is a institution of white supremacy. That sort of, it's like crazy stuff. It's total redefinition of words. Like Merriam-Webster just redefined the sexual preference versus sexual orientation yesterday as per the Amy Coney Barrett hearings. So if you think the truth is something that anyone has authority over, you're wrong. Everyone's willing to be bought out, right? Everyone's got a horse in this race. So if the DoD can be compromised to that level where they are teaching anti-whiteness training and anti-racism training, which anti-racism just means discrimination against white people. By that is defined by the person who came up with the term, Ibrahim X. Kendi. All right, okay. So if they can be compromised, then who else can be, right? So these government agencies provide the funding to scientists, and if the scientists don't find something that these agencies like, do you think they're going to get another round of funding? Now, there's a thing called self-censorship. It's when the censorship is not overt, it's not commanded, but I know what you want. All right, you give me money, and I know what you're looking for. I give you more of that because I want more of the money. You didn't ask for it. I'm going to give you more of it, though, because I know that's what you want. A fish never asked for a worm. I just know it catches more fish. Okay? It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. So things get skewed. You'll see that things have reversed. They've already reversed the whole lockdown thing, which is extremely predictable. They're like, oh, it only hurts the poor. I was like, yeah, welcome to what conservatives were saying from like week 2 onward, right? Right now, the conservatives don't own any of these institutions right now. A lot of the institutions that we have been sort of taken over because the Republicans dropped the ball and they're a bunch of feckless idiots who ceded over the entertainment industry. They ceded over the education industry. They've ceded over the government agencies now. They've ceded over, count it. What else is there? Like, you got secondary school, you have primary school, even daycare, like everything. They sacrificed everything that is the nation's future, which is why everything's so crazy right now. Right. Right? So as soon as that switches over, as soon as the conservatives are in charge of all those agencies and they become politicized the other way, then I'll probably be a liberal again. It doesn't matter to me. I just don't like liars. So Now you know a little bit more on how to spot them. Look how they're getting their money. Follow the money. That's why they're lying. Don't be a conspiracy theorist, though. Don't be stupid. All right. Yeah, don't be a conspiracy theorist. Be like, I don't really quite trust that. That's probably more reasonable. Don't make up new narratives to explain behavior. It's usually just because they were getting some sort of overt payout. So, all right. This has been the Alex Vanassa. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys later.